Today, I'm thrilled to be able to introduce the second part of our interview on Minna de Honkoku and the Cambridge Summer School in Early Modern Japanese Paleography with Professor Hashimoto Yuta, Dr. Laura Moretti, and Mr. Joseph Bills. This part picks up directly from the end of the last interview, with Joseph Bills explaining his use of Minna de Honkoku in the intermediate level classes that he taught during the summer school. The interview continues to explore questions of the use of Minna de Honkoku in an educational setting, and as it progresses, we explore plans for the development of the platform, plans for the development of the summer school, and perhaps most importantly, wider questions about the use of digital tools within classical Japanese language education. Without further ado, here is the second part of the interview.
A little bit of recap of what I already said. There were a couple of people who were a little bit more reticent at the start, but over time, more and more people were using it. And as we were going through the supervisions, which, as I say, were much more focused on individual techniques and stuff like that to make people's work themselves more correct in a much more focused kind of manner than a seminar or a much bigger class. People started to use the techniques of kind of going onto the AI, looking through the different options, using the two different AIs, which I think is what some people sometimes forget to do, to pit the AIs against each other in a battle to find what the most correct kazushi is. And then using all of that information, because that's really what Minna de Honkoku is. It's another source of information. It's not the be-all and end-all, and it's not the answer, but it is another tool in your toolbox that you can then use. And I think the participants were more and more comfortable with that as they were going on. And I mean, I know I can speak to what Dr. Moretti said, in that I sometimes do miss Minna de Honkoku when I'm dealing with my own kind of resources. I very often look at a character and I'm just like, what are you? I wish I had someone here with a computer-sized knowledge of the of kazushi to give me something to start with. So it is important to be able to do it without it, but I really think if you just look at the system as a means to an end, not an end, then you develop the skills almost subconsciously to be able to work without the system, if you get what I mean.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'd like to ask two, I guess, perhaps they're shorter questions to Dr. Moretti. The first is about the Tackling Pandemics in Early Modern Japan project, which replaced the summer school in 2020. And so, which I may be incorrect, but it's, if I'm right, it's not included amongst it's not the 7th summer school, or was it the 7th summer school?
I'd like to count it as 7, so we get to the 10th quicker. So for me, it was the 7th in the end, but yes.
But it was a very different project, I guess, not a school format, so to speak. So what were the reasons that you decided to move away from the project format, which perhaps I'll need to ask you to explain briefly, back to a summer school format in this past year? And how did the use of Meena on both the project and the school, well, you've explained the school, but how did it differ?
Yeah, thank you very much. So the project, I would like to share my screen. The project is actually open to the public. So if you go under this URL, it is open to everyone without any need to input a password. I'll go back to this in a little while, but as you can see, the project was only focusing on early modern texts that dealt in some way or another with pandemics in early modern Japan. We thought it was very timely, and indeed it proved very thought-provoking for other venues. And Professor Hashimoto has a background in history of science, so his input also in choosing the materials was very interesting, and we had a lot of interest coming out of this project. But as you can see, there were a lot of texts, and these texts have been transcribed almost completely. And some of them were really long. We had two actually sets of projects. I'll stop sharing for a second, but the project was geared only towards intermediate advanced learners. So we only allowed to participate those who had already knowledge of how to read and transcribe. It entailed, as I said, the transcription of a very high number of texts, so a very high number of folios, over a fairly long period of time. I think we went over for about 6 months, and no classroom time at all. So my job ended up being to check the transcriptions and leave comments via Minna de Honkoku. But as Joseph mentioned, in the end, I was really helped by Joseph and other participants because of the sheer amount of text to check. It was a great experience, which has made publicly accessible several sources, which are really key to think about pandemics in early modern Japan. But I was personally not happy about a few points. And this is not about Minna de Honkoku. This is about the project that I came up with. Yeah. So first, for me to exclude those who start reading cursive from scratch or those at beginner's level is really troubling, because one of the main goals of the summer school is to support precisely this type of learner. So that was not ideal. Second, to be honest, not being able to work in a classroom environment, although virtual, meant that I could really not have any grasp of how each participant was progressing. And that for me was deeply frustrating. As Joseph knows, I am a very hands-on instructor, even too much at times. So not being able to follow the progress of the participants was really frustrating. Third, because we had no coming together moments in class, the comments that I made to one participant, for example, when you input furigana, please do it like that, would never reach another participant. So there was a lot of duplications. And also we had no opportunity to discuss about the meaning, which really is the crux, as I said. We didn't have time to work on a rough translation. And that is really problematic. On top of that, the sheer number of materials transcribed was too vast for any of us to really check that the final product was as accurate as humanly possible. And this is really important to stress, I think. Accurate transcriptions, that is our job. That is our goal. If the goal is not reached, one needs to rethink about how to do this. So if I share again my screen and I take you to what I said I will come back to, this is a long disclaimer saying, careful when using the transcriptions, they might not be as accurate as they should be. We apologize, but we can't do more than this. And that for me was something that really didn't allow me to be very happy about the project. And I think that, stop sharing, but I think that working again with Minna de Honkoku, but also bringing in the classroom experience or the supervision experience, and therefore checking the accuracy, checking the meaning, making sure that the final product is actually correct, and making sure that everyone was learning at the same time. I think for me, that was the plus of this year structure. I hope this answered your question. So I would not probably go back to any project, even though the intermediate advanced track that Joseph was in charge of, in a way, was something similar to the Tackling Pandemic project. And so this idea of really empowering those who are on the project, it is their project. So that we kept alive, but also addressing the issues that I felt were in place last year. But as you can see, this is none of Minna de Honkoku's fault, it is my fault. So yeah, thank you.
You're using Minna de Honkoku for the summer school. Do you also use it in your term time teaching, or is it just something for the summer school?
Okay, so at Cambridge, we do not have undergraduate classes where I teach paleography. I teach classical at different levels, but we use transcribed text. Having said that, I do work on original early modern text with students in 2 instances. First, in my one-to-one supervisions with graduate students, they normally are quite proficient in reading cursive, so we don't really rely on AI so much. Second, I ran a monthly study group, and last year we started using Minna de Honkoku, so we are using Minna de Honkoku for that monthly reading group, sort of Benkyokai. And I think that one of the areas that Professor Hashimoto may be looking into is whether users of Minna de Honkoku can upload images which are not IIIF. Because I think that many of us have, oh, I'm working on this text, but it's not available in IIIF. We can't bring it to Minna de Honkoku. But that is, you know, I imagine it's incredibly difficult. So I just am grateful to Professor Hashimoto that he's thinking about that.
Thank you. And actually, it's a great time to bring Professor Hashimoto back into the discussion. Sorry for keeping you out of things for so long, but I'd like to know everyone's sort of reflections on using Meena as an educational tool, and particularly you've touched on this already in some of your answers, but what do you think its advantages and perhaps also disadvantages are in comparison to other methods of teaching for early modern Japanese paleography? I don't know which order we should approach this, so I will leave it to whoever would like to speak first.
So you're really asking us to compare Minna de Honkoku with others, or?
No. Well, potentially. I guess what I'm asking is to compare Minna de Honkoku with the sort of dictionary style learning method which you mentioned before, and if you think there are advantages to one method over the other or disadvantages. Yeah.
I'm just a system developer and I don't know much about teaching Japanese paleography, but in my opinion, one of the major advantages of Minna de Honkoku in teaching Kuzushi-ji is that it allows users to communicate and collaborate with other users, as Dr. Moretti and Joseph-san have mentioned many times. Yeah, users can get feedback from other users or teachers like Moretti sensei, and immediately after entering transcriptions. And this should increase the learning effect to some extent and helps maintain their motivation, more importantly. And one major disadvantage, maybe it's quite simple text model. I mean, for example, you cannot put a comment independently from the transcription text, unlike you do with when you work with a Word document. Yeah, you have to add your comment as a part of it, the transcription. Also, you can highlight your comment. The simplicity of data model can be an advantage sometimes, but this is inconvenient when our system is used in a classroom. I have received from Dr. Moretti some requests regarding with this commenting feature, and I have created a feature that allows users to write a comment within a text box. But I think this is not enough, and it's obvious that I need to implement more features to facilitate review process among users and teachers. I think that's all.
Thank you very much. Cool. Joseph or Dr. Moretti?
Joseph?
Dr. Moretti, do you want to go first?
No, Joseph.
Well, I was going to say, I don't really have any experience of teaching without Minna de Honkoku, let's be clear about that. But at least from experiencing teaching without Minna de Honkoku, I think, to be honest, one of the advantages of the system is that, honestly, it's not that far away. And what I mean by that is that it's not an OCR system. It's not trying to do it for you. So in a way, you can, if you decide not to use the AI button, you are just creating a transcription like you would usually. So you can be taught in very similar ways. And that thing is an extra, it's an extra dictionary, really, more than anything else. And I think the advantages with Minna de Honkoku come with A, that dictionary, B, the ability, I can't remember if we mentioned this specifically, but the ability to put the text actually into the image itself. I can't share my screen at the moment because I'm on a different computer, but if someone has that later, it'd be interesting to show it. But really, at least in my experience of both receiving teaching of both styles and also actually when I was in Japan being taught it, and then also teaching it myself, I really think it's very good in preserving, I suppose, the kind of teaching experience as opposed to replacing it, which is always the worry with these kind of AI systems, or at least it's a worry that I've had, and I think Dr. Moretti at times has had, that a lot of people will be like, right, now AI can do it for me, I don't care, give it to the computer and I'll work with it. Whereas Minna de Honkoku does not work like that, and I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point, actually. You can use Minna de Honkoku without using what we term as AI-chan. You can use it as just your input platform. But as you said, it has that extra dictionary there. I'd never thought about it in those terms before, but yeah, you could divorce it from the wonderful features it offers as well to some extent. I'll turn over to Dr. Moretti now.
Yeah, I just like really to echo all that has been said. I think that for me, the two really key features is AI is designed to assist us, not do the job instead of us, and the platform is designed to enable collaborative work, which I think are very important elements in our teaching. I do also take Joseph's point, which I think is very clever, because in a way, there are people who are very excited about AI, and there are people who are equally unhappy about AI in the world, right? So I think that Minna de Honkoku can make all of these people happy, because AI is there and we can be part in a way of developing this, helping out by creating transcriptions. But by the same token, if somebody really hates AI, the idea of AI, they can still use the platform as a fantastic platform to transcribe. And if I can just share again my screen, you will see that, let's go back to, oh, sorry. Let's go back to what James did, just because it's very easy and accurate. And we can actually download. This is something that is new in Minna de Honkoku. It was new from this year. And this is fantastic because you can just download the transcription in a Word file and then use it for your project, for example. The other thing that Joseph mentioned was this functionality here that allows to write the text the transcription in the text. I mean, this is not very helpful for this text, but it is very helpful for text in which there are images and the text is within the images, for example. So it has a lot of very interesting functionality that would suit anyone with or without an interest in AI. This is more than AI. It uses AI, but it is much more. It is a platform that is very allows you to do many things, including teaching in a more traditional way, if you wish to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. So you were speaking about functionality, and I guess this is another place to bring in Professor Hashimoto. We've already mentioned a few things about the development of Meena, a commenting system, for example. So I wonder how the use of Meena in a formal educational setting, like the Cambridge Summer School, has changed the trajectory of the platform of the application, and what sort of challenges it's also posing to the application. If I could ask for your thoughts on that, it would be wonderful.
Yes, yeah, the Cambridge Summer School, yeah, gave a lot of experience to me, and yeah, this experience changed the trajectory for Minna de Honkoku. Well, through the Cambridge Summer School, I came to realize that dealing with privacy is a big challenge for the platform. Basically, Minna de Honkoku is a public platform, just like Wikipedia, and almost all the information, including the names of users, their transcriptions, and their input history, are exposed to the public. But of course, this is not good for the use in a classroom. So when the Cambridge Summer School started last year, I had to set up a dedicated web server secured by a password. But actually, that was a lot of work. I had to copy all the data and the software into a different web server. This experience taught me the importance of making the system available for private uses as well. And the future version of Minna de Honkoku will strongly support such private uses.
Thank you. Wonderful. And I have another question for you, actually, Professor Hashimoto. Earlier in the interview, you mentioned the application that you developed. I believe it's known as Kula, but the full name is Kazushiji Gakushu Shien Apodi Kula, and was actually the very first thing I wrote in Digital Orientalist was actually a review of Kula, and it was in comparison to the app, Hentai Gana app, which is perhaps offered by Waseda University. So I wanted to ask about this app and whether it's seeing the same sort of usage as Minna de Honkoku in educational settings, or if it's primarily something which individuals use. And I wonder if there's any, so on Kula, there's lots of sort of places you can get more general information about classical Japanese texts, about old documents. And I wonder if these sorts of features, this providing of information, will ever be included within the Meena platform as well. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you, James. I remembered your brilliant article. Well, so Kura, Kuzushiji Learning App, was designed mainly for individual users. But I've heard some university courses using it for teaching students kuzushiji. I've heard that in some courses, students are required to pass the test of Kura in order to get a grade. Yeah, I feel sorry a bit for those students. Well, actually, the initial version of Minna de Honkoku was integrated with Kura. All the learning materials and features of Kura were available on Minna de Honkoku as well. Let me screen share the first version of Minna de Honkoku. Okay, like you see, this is the first version of Minna de Honkoku. Let's switch to English. And yeah, you can use all the materials available on Kura, like this one. Yeah, but this feature was dropped when I was working on the current version, just because I didn't have time to implement this feature again. But I promise that this feature will be available again in the future version of Minna de Honkoku. Okay, and besides, I have a plan to update Kura itself soon. It's been 5 years since I made an update to Kura for the last time, and it has been downloaded over 100,000 times, and I have received so many requests from the users for an update. And the next update will include more kuzushiji characters, more reading materials, and more features for running kuzushiji effectively. Yeah, that's my plan at this moment.
Fantastic. I hadn't been aware that you were planning on updating it. So that's really good news. Yeah.
James, sorry, can I be a little bit curious here and go back to Hashimoto sensei's first, the answer to your first question in this section, which, so what you have learned from working with us nagging for changes and tweaks. So one was privacy. You said, is there anything else that you thought, oh, never thought about this, but I should do this or something?
Other than the feature to create a private project.
Yes, yeah, that's, exactly.
As you mentioned, the feature to upload image owned by users will be useful. And there should be a lot of other features that will be useful for the Cambridge summer school, but I will let you know later.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry, James.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. So speaking about, we just were talking about the application, which is, for people who are unfamiliar with Kula, it's effectively a flashcard based app. And this is where I'd like to turn back to Joseph, who for the summer school this year, you created our sort of, I guess it was for the beginners course, a preparatory flashcard deck in the application Memrise. And I used it myself. It's still on my phone, tuning in every now and then. So I'm wondering what spurred you to create your own flashcard deck rather than using a pre-existing app, and do you plan to ever make this deck available outside of the summer school, or is it something which is only ever going to be used by summer school participants?
So the simple answer to that is I don't trust other people. That's why I made my own one instead of using someone else's, because I don't trust them. But to be more less flippant about it, so I actually created this thing well before summer school. I created it in 2020, I believe, because in the 2019 summer school, and I'll share the thing in a sec. In the 2019 summer school, Dr. Moretti was pushing people to learn Jibo, which, in case anyone doesn't know, are the kanji that kind of are the source of the hentaigana, the kanji that get kusasarata all the way down into hentaigana. And they're really useful for learning the hentaigana because all kinds of reasons. It's some people, for example, I think in kanji quite a lot. I find it a lot easier to remember a word if I know the kanji. So I find it a lot easier to remember the reading of a hentaigana if I can work out which kanji it came from. There are various other reasons that they are very useful to use, and Dr. Moretti is pushing that and pushing that and pushing that. And in all honesty, she completely failed to convince me. So I didn't learn them originally. But then I went to Japan, and a Japanese professor placed a test in front of me and forced me to learn Jibo. And as a result, I thought to myself, right, I need a way of doing this. And the way I learned Japanese in the first place was by using flashcards and by using Memrise, which I'll share my screen and show. Because I've just always used this website. It's the one I like, and I create various cards on it for, well, as I say, modern Japanese. I originally did it on to learn all of the different vocab I needed to do. So I thought this would be a good place to do it. So I did it. I made it for my own kind of personal study. But as James, you've mentioned, all it is really is a load of flashcards with the Jibo and the hentaigana that goes along with it. I also created my own one because then I could control exactly what was there, as opposed to relying on what someone else kind of thought was the right thing to do. I could choose to exclude, for example, certain variants that are so unused, you know, from the Heian period that it's pointless to even look at them. It's a case where you use it once in 17 years kind of thing. I could leave them to the side. I could also make it, because the way I wanted this was that you connect the image to the kanji, not to the hentaigana or the modern hiragana. So I could control that. So you have to input yasui instead of inputting hiragana a for anything like that. So basically it gave me a lot more control. And I always use Memrise as opposed to something like Anki, which you might have heard of, which is another flashcard system. I use this one because, and it sounds like I'm shilling for the company here. I have no connection to the company at all, but I use this one because the way it works with its spaced repetitions algorithm, where it gives you, it brings up flashcards to you that you're not very good at a higher frequency than ones that you are good at. So if you're really good at recognizing one particular flashcard, it will give it to you much less frequently the ones that you've got wrong. Anki and other systems do that as well, but they require you to judge your own ability. So you, for example, do a flashcard, think the answer to yourself, check the answer, and then it will say, give yourself a rating. I understood this, I kind of understood this, I got it wrong. And I know I would lie in that situation. I would lie to the system. And even if I got it wrong, I would go for, okay, I kind of know it. Or for example, if I knew it on getting the answer, I'd probably click yes, even though I got it wrong. Whereas Memrise does not allow that. It's a, you got it right, you got it wrong, we will decide for you system. So I've always used that. So I just decided to create this, and then considering it was already there, I thought, why not? Let's open it up to the summer school. It's probably useful to some other people. And I'm very happy to see that actually it seems to have been used, because I can also see a leaderboard, and there's quite a few number of people that have been using it from the summer school, which is really, really good. As for whether I make it public, I think I'm going to keep it behind a link in the summer school for the time being, as opposed to making it public, because yeah, I just think that would probably be a better way to go about it.
So we're now moving into the last section of the interview, which is just some closing questions and briefly touching on some related topics. So first I have a couple of questions for everyone. So the first one is about, I guess, competing tools, competing applications. So there's quite a few tools now on the market for either designed to help people to learn cursive Japanese or classical Japanese grammar as well. There's a lot of apps for classical Japanese grammar, or even, and we've mentioned these sorts of tools several times, tools to help transcribe pre-modern Japanese texts. So I wondered how you think some of these other tools, I mean, there's a lot of them, so we don't need to talk about all of them, but how they compare to Meena when we consider the questions of education and teaching specifically.
Yeah, there are a lot of tools available for learning cursive Japanese characters and classical Japanese grammar. One example is online transcription support system provided by Toppan Incorporated, and there are useful tools provided by CODH, Center for Open Data in the Humanities, including Mio app, which was recently become available in the as a mobile app. And yeah, I like to be I want Minna de Honkoku to be competent with against other tools, but I think it's not possible for Minna de Honkoku alone to cover all the training for learning classical Japanese characters and yeah, classical Japanese grammar. So I will be happy if Minna de Honkoku will coexist with other tools. Yeah, that's my opinion as a developer.
Wonderful, thank you. Actually, if I may jump to Joseph quickly before bringing in Dr. Moretti. I believe that one of the applications that Hashimoto Sensei just mentioned, the platform ran by Toppan is, I may be wrong here, it's a Fuminoha, and I believe you have some experience using that platform within an educational setting. So obviously, same question applies. If there's other tools you also want to talk about, go for it. But it would also be great to hear your comparative experience using Meena and Fuminoha.
Yeah, so I think I'll leave it to Fuminoha because I think especially Dr. Moretti will have thoughts about other particular examples. But so I used that last year while I was in Japan. One particular class that I went to did decide to do kazushiji teaching using one of those systems, in this case Toppan's Fuminoha. That one is run in a very different way to Minna de Honkoku though. It's like, really putting them in the same box is kind of a bad faith argument almost, because it is a completely separate system. Like, so the way it works is that this is very much an OCR system. It will AI the entire thing for you, and it will create the transcription. When you actually look at the website itself, if I show you it, and you have the Komonjo Kaidoku service, it actually offers a service as a company where it will do the AI first, and then you can pay to have a person check the AI's transcription. So they admit that the AI might not be perfect, but that's kind of how they do it. And also the way their kind of system is designed is different, because it is almost completely a case of the writing is on top of the original text. So instead of where Minna de Honkoku, you have it to the side in a kind of text window, this is always kind of on top of the hiragana themselves, which we can argue about the advantages and disadvantages of. I sometimes think it makes it horrible to read, but that is just the different ways they've been designed. But Fuminoha also seems to have been designed in a lot of cases for more of the online teaching side of it and the kind of seminar side of it. The way we used it was that we had a page of the Nise Monogatari that had already been transcribed behind the scenes. And then in the class, each person would attack the page, provide their own transcription, and then it would give a percentage score for how correct it was. And the teacher could, behind the scenes, be, right, these people got this score on this page and they got these bits wrong, and they could work out kind of how people were doing. The issue with that, of course, being that it's got to be with a text that has already been transcribed for this purpose, usually by Toppan, or, well, I'm not entirely sure if it's by Toppan, but by someone else. It isn't set up in that system, or at least the system that I experienced. It wasn't set up for someone to use their own stuff on in terms of teaching. But as I said, I haven't talked to developers. I only was on the receiving end of that. And as I say, there are very much services that allow you to upload your own stuff and pass it through the AI. I think Minna de Honkoku is a lot more hands-on in terms of the researchers working on it, and is set up in a very different way. But it's interesting to see the different ways you can do this. Yeah, from Minna to Fuminoha and some of the others as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
This is actually a very difficult question, because I think we are living in very exciting times where a lot of developers are developing different platforms and different tools, possibly for different uses. Yeah. My job is to keep the next, I think, as I see it, my job is to keep the next generations engaged with the primary sources, thinking that they need to be able to read them. And I think that there is a lot of value in this, but that should be a completely different discussion probably. So keeping in mind that that is my goal, I look for tools that fit that goal. So for me, Minna de Honkoku is the only AI-powered platform, if I can say that, AI-powered platform that really can be fruitfully used for the kind of goals that I have in mind. I think that Kuronet and then the most recently launched up Mio are OCR type platforms. And I'm sure that they can do incredible things when it comes to digital humanities and different sets of questions, data mining, for example, and so on and so forth, if they become accurate. Because I think that we always have to think that accuracy is the key. And so before using any tool, I think I would encourage anyone to try it out and see if it is accurate or not, okay? So I think that these tools, Kuronet and Mio, can be very fruitful, but I cannot see how I can use them in the classroom because the machine reads it for you and gives the impression that the job is done. And that for me doesn't simply work in the classroom setting, even though I think it's a fantastic idea that all these other venues are developed for other uses. Toppan, I never had the privilege to use Fuminoha myself. I have seen the explanations on their webpage. I know that colleagues, esteemed colleagues in Japan has used it. It's just very expensive, and I have to be honest in saying that I cannot afford it for the summer school or for monthly study groups. And from what I've seen, it's not giving me anything adding to Minna de Honkoku. So from what I've seen, I have never been thinking, oh, well, I should fundraising for using Fuminoha. But as I said, it could be very interesting for different types or maybe of teaching for bigger classes where you can't really have your hands on what each of the participants does. So each different settings has their own needs. I think that there is also a system developed by Ritsumeikan and I think we tried it out a few 3 years ago, I think, but somehow it didn't fit the needs of the summer school. And I don't know of any other AI-powered platforms. So for us, for me, from my point of view, Minna de Honkoku really fits the bill and gives us what we need to keep the scholars of early modern text engaging with the texts in a way that they will be able to read the text on their own and really do what Joseph has shown Fumino Hub, but also the Mio app has a disclaimer that says, if you want an accurate translation, go back to people who transcribe. And I think that for us is training those people. That's my job, right? But as I said, we live in very exciting times with different tools. Yeah.
Thank you. So that actually gives a great segue into the next question. So yes, exciting times, quickly developing times. Where is the place of the traditional analog tools within our future work is what I'd like to ask about. Is there still a place for I think I know all your answers already, but is there still a place for traditional books, dictionaries, the tools we would have used if we were learning these things, maybe even 5-6 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, there are more and more digital tools and resources available for learners of Japanese studies, but still the amount of contents available in digital format is still limited compared to the amount of analog resources. And more importantly, in some cases, the physical nature of historical materials can be subject of research. For example, this includes the type of materials, size of woodblock printings. This information can be quite important for some scholars. So I think even if there are more and more digital resources, we will not be able to go completely digital. Yeah, so to some extent, we need to stick with the old analog way of studying. Things. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Wonderful.
I mean, the way I see it is exactly as Hashimoto just said. You need to not have a system where you're competing between the digital and the analog, because that helps no one. You need to create a system where you're using the different advantages of the different media. The digital one, the major advantage of that is that a computer can think faster than a human could ever do. And that's what a computer is great at. It's great at pattern, not at pattern recognition, it's great at maths, right? And it's great at having 1 million data sets and bringing it down to 2 or 3. Whereas, the analog stuff is much better at what a human can do, which is kind of the analysis, the thinking, I suppose, more than just the sheer attacking it, brute force way of doing it. So you've got to use both, I think. And I do not worry, but I do wonder if the growth of digital resources might stifle the appetite to create more analog resources. I wonder if there are going to be many more Kazushiji dictionaries produced, which I think would be a shame because some of them need to be updated. Like there's that I can't remember what it's called, but Dr. Moretti refers to it as the purple book that is used to work out what a Kazushiji is purely from the stroke order, but it's horrific to use. And if there was an appetite to update, they create more analog resources. I don't see a problem with that just because we have more digital ones. And of course, there are loads of books out there which are specifically on Komonjo, or there are various books that are like, here is a text, here is the transcription, kind of put side to side. so that you can see both of them. And I think those are as valuable as the digital side of it. So I really think it's a case of just using both and making use of what is the advantages of the systems, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to echo what has been said, I think that Minna de Honkoku really is a tremendously helpful resource that complements more traditional resources. The only dictionary that I think could perhaps be replaced by the AI function in Minna de Honkoku is, and I'm going to share the screen, but it is indeed what Joseph has just mentioned, which is this dictionary here, Kuzushiji Kaidoku Jiten. And this dictionary is designed to look up at characters in the way the cursive has been written. So if you go into a typical page, this is the stroke that you're looking at. It's not a radical, it's a stroke. And then there are, from this stroke, it goes into another stroke. Now, this dictionary is very difficult to use if you don't have some basic training in calligraphy, I think. And also, as you can see, for each character, they give very few examples of cursive. So in a way, I think that Minna de Honkoku, the AI function, allows us to get do away with this dictionary, which I think, yeah, I would not cry about, really, not having to use this. Another online tool, which we also have suggested on our webpage, is this AI Tegaki Kuzushiji Kensaku, which does pretty much the same. The idea is that you write, mimic the cursive, and then hints will be brought up by AI. It's not clear what data sets it uses, so I'm not sure to what extent we should be using it, but I personally find it quite helpful to get away from, again, this dictionary here. But other than that, and I stop sharing, I think that we still needed to complement the online resources, including the AI function in Minna de Honkoku, with other dictionaries of cursive script, or online dictionaries or paper dictionaries, and actually both. Because normally, when you want to look up whether you got the right character, having multiple checks in the paper dictionary, dictionaries, there are many, on the online data set, Shiryo Hensanjo has one, CODH has another. So comparing all these tools, using them together enhances the accuracy. So don't be shy, use as many as possible and make the best use of that. Obviously, we continue to use dictionaries of Japanese. Nihon Kokugo Daijiten is there. We need to check the meanings of words. Specific dictionaries, for example, for the city of the language of the city of Edo, Edo Gojiten. So we still use all these materials in addition to these wonderfully newly designed materials, including AI-chan in Minna de Honkoku. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll all be very happy to know that there's only 2 questions left, and I think they're both rather short, because perhaps people listening aren't aware that we've been going for almost 2 hours now, but wonderful. So I have a final question for Dr. Moretti and Joseph. And I guess it's slightly different for each of you. So for Dr. Moretti, it's, do you intend to be using, perhaps this question's completely outdated, but when you return to face-to-face classes, face-to-face summer school next year, I hope, will you still be using Minna de Honkoku in some way? And then for Joseph, it's in your future career as an academic, do you intend to be using Minna de Honkoku within your teaching? So I guess I will ask Dr. Moretti to speak first.
Well, the answer is definitely yes, if Hashimoto sensei allows me to. So definitely yes. And we are thinking about going back in person in 2022. And I am thinking of pretty much using a similar structure to this year. And in the end, Minna de Honkoku, is there to be used in the virtual classroom, on remotely, but also in the physical classroom. And as I said, the idea is to use it as the platform to then encourage active learning in group.
Yeah, and on my side of it, apologies for the future, Hashimoto sensei, but I may be getting in contact because yes, no, I definitely would want to do something like that if I came across teaching a Kazushiji class. I think it's a very, very useful system. And really, I know I will go as far to say it is a better thing when used in conjunction with everything else. I don't see a value in getting rid of it. Let's put it that way. I don't see a value in going back to the old way. Like, as it's been said many, many times over the course of this interview, like, we can only really see a net positive out of this. So yeah, I would.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And then there's one last question for Hashimoto sensei, which is perhaps one of the questions that might be of most interest to our readers, perhaps, which is, how do you think, what's the future hold for Minna de Honkoku? And we've touched on this a couple of times, I think, some of the potential features which will be coming up in the future, but could you give us a brief overview of the plans for development?
First, I'm really happy that Moretti sensei and Joseph-san will keep using Minna de Honkoku in the future. So, the future of Minna de Honkoku, it's still in the conceptual stage, but the next version of Minna de Honkoku will provide more support for the use by small groups, including the Cambridge Summer School. Well, at least 3 new features will be added to the next version. One is support for user-generated projects, which will allow users to create their own transcription projects. And it will be possible to create private projects that can only be accessed by the users, authorized by the project owner. Well, and the second one is support for image upload, like I said earlier. This will allow users to upload the document images they own, and the uploaded images will be automatically converted to GIF format and will be imported to the system. But this feature requires a large amount of storage, and yeah, so I need to get the funding for it, or I need to find a way to charge users for image hosting. So yeah, and the third one is integration with more powerful AI, like the one used in Mio app. Yeah, it will be great if we can use AIs that can recognize all the characters in a document image at once. For this, I will need to talk with Tani-san first. This addition of the addition of this feature may spoil users and reduce their motivation. Yeah, so considering this risk, I need to be very careful when adding this feature. So yeah, at this moment, I cannot say how long it will take to develop this new version. Maybe for a couple of years. It depends on how busy I will be for the next few years. But no matter how long it will take for development, I will continue the development because it's my pleasure to contribute to educational projects like the Cambridge Summer School, and because it's quite rare opportunity for a developer like me to engage with such a significant activity for the future of Japanese studies. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. So now I wanted to make a little bit of space so we can talk about current projects, ongoing projects. And I believe one of the projects coming out of the summer school is, I only know it by the loose name of the Kibyoshi project, but it's something that Dr. Moretti would like to talk about briefly, and we would love to hear some more details on this.
I think that what is really exciting, I personally find exciting about the summer school, is that you have a lot of participants that then are brought together by common interest and they want to work more together. I know that a lot of the participants are still working on the materials that we made available for the summer school, but we also have a smaller group who will work on a project, a book project actually, which will be led by two of my graduate students. One is Freddie Fielden, who works on early 19th century graphic narratives, and he's in his second year of a PhD with us. And the other will be Joseph Bills, who will start his MPhil in a few weeks. And the idea is to work on this Kibyoshi, so yellow cover book, picture book of graphic narratives. I'm going to share the screen. We will be working on the copy that is kept at the National Diet Library. This is a 2-volume early graphic narrative. Manpuku Choja Tama has not been transcribed. Again, once you decide to transcribe something for publication, you have also to check very carefully whether it has been transcribed or not. So far, no, it hasn't been transcribed. And as you can see from the picture, it will be quite fun, and it connects also to all sorts of text in the Edo period that deal with farts, which might sound preposterous, but actually is quite an interesting topic in popular literature for the Edo period. And the idea, I stopped sharing, but the idea is that the participants of this small project, group project, each of the contributors will help with the Honkoku, with the diplomatic transcription. Their names will be acknowledged in the publication. And then Freddie and Joseph will then have the hard work to produce a critical annotated edition of the text, an English translation, and 2 introductory essays. And the final product will be something similar to the book I published with Brill in 2016, Recasting the Past, an Early Modern Tales of Essay for Children. And it will contain also the transcription. So obviously, it will be, for us, the first published product that comes out of the summer school, and the first published product that also includes the use of Minna de Honkoku. So it's an exciting project, and it will be my job to really keep us all working hard to complete it. Yes, within a couple of years. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? I think that's everything, I believe. Wonderful. So thank you all for coming today, and for offering your time to speak to me and to the audience of the Digital Orientalist, and for sharing your thoughts and experience on using Minna de Honkoku in an educational setting. It's really important. A lot of us involved in the digital humanities, no matter how loosely, like myself, I'm fairly tangentially involved in the digital humanities. We often don't think about the practical aspects of the practical applications of the tools that we use so much as just having the tool, or at least that's my experience of things. So I think this is going to be of great interest to all our readers, and particularly our traditional sort of readership, which is based in how we use, is based in people interested in how we use digital tools within our daily life and work. So thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you for making the time and giving us the opportunity to reflect and you know, think about the future as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you, James-san.
So that's the end of the second part of our interview on Minna de Honkoku and the Cambridge Summer School in Early Modern Japanese Paleography. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And if you would like to see more interviews by the digital orientalists in the future, please let us know. Thank you very much for listening or watching the second part of the interview. Farewell.